Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine a company so powerful it had its own army, it minted its own money, and it was so valuable it makes today's tech giants, the Apples and the Googles, look like little startups. And here's the kicker. This company existed over 400 years ago.
Yeah, $7.9 trillion. Just let that number hang in the air for a second. That was the peak value, adjusted for inflation, of the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC as we'll call it. I mean, that is a number so big, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And if you're still trying to grasp that scale, well, take a look at this. This chart really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? We're not just talking bigger than Apple or Nvidia. No. At its peak, the VOC was worth more than a whole bunch of today's biggest companies put together. It wasn't just a big company, it was bigger than the economies of entire countries at the time. So, that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did a spice trading company from 400 years ago become the most valuable corporation in history? Well, the answer isn't just about ships and spices. Not at all. It's about a series of, brilliant and frankly, pretty ruthless financial inventions that completely changed the world.
Okay, so to really get the genius of the VOC, we have to kind of take a step back. We need to understand the world it was born into, because it was an incredibly dangerous place. Sure, the rewards for global trade were huge, but the risks, they were absolutely astronomical.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Let's say you're a rich merchant back then. Funding just one voyage to the East Indies was a massive gamble. You'd pour your entire fortune into a single ship, and then poof, it could get smashed to pieces by a storm, or taken by pirates, or the entire crew could get wiped out by disease. It was a total all-or-nothing bet, which meant, most people just couldn't afford to play the game. So what was the solution? Well, this is where the VOC got really smart. Their answer to this massive risk wasn't to try and build better, unsinkable ships. No, their solution was to build an unsinkable financial structure. They basically built a machine. And they started with an idea that we take for granted today, but back then, it was absolutely revolutionary. The initial public offering, the IPO. Think about that. For the very first time in history, a company said, hey, anyone, can own a piece of us. They sold shares to the general public on an open market and even created the world's first stock exchange just to trade them. But here's the second stroke of genius, and this one might be even more important. It's called limited liability. Basically, it meant that if you bought a share and things went south, the company totally failed, the absolute most you could lose was the money you paid for that share. That's it. Your house, your other businesses, your life savings, all of it was safe. This was a total game changer because it made investing accessible to everybody. So suddenly, the whole system was incredibly simple for, a regular person to get in on the action. You'd buy just one share and boom, instantly, your investment wasn't tied to one risky ship, it was spread across the VOC's entire fleet of hundreds of ships. You could actually get rich from this massive global empire without ever having to leave your couch in Amsterdam. And this slide, I think, just perfectly captures the whole point. Look, their physical tech, the wooden ships, that was pretty standard for the 17th century. But their financial tech, the ideas of public shares, a stock market, limited liability, that stuff was from the future. It was centuries ahead of its time. That was their secret weapon. And they used that financial weapon to build something that, it wasn't just a company anymore. As one historian put it, it was more than a company, it was a machine of economic warfare. And when you see what they were allowed to do, you'll understand why. I mean, just look at this list of powers they had. The VOC had its own army. It had its own navy of warships. It could negotiate treaties with foreign kings. It could literally declare and wage war. It could set up colonies. This wasn't a company. It was a private corporation acting with all the power of a government. So, you might be thinking, okay, interesting history lesson, but what does this have to do with me today? The answer is pretty much everything. The VOC didn't just build a trading empire. They literally drew up the blueprints for the modern world we live in. See, the financial systems they pioneered, they're not just some dusty old relics in a history book. They are the direct ancestors of our world. The stock markets you see on the news every night, the very idea of shareholders, the massive multinational corporations that define our lives, the DNA for all of it can be traced right back to this one company. It's incredible, really. You can draw a perfectly straight line from that very first chaotic stock exchange in Amsterdam way back in 1602, right through the founding of the New York Stock Exchange, all the way to the insane 24/7 global digital markets we have today. They didn't just influence it, they wrote the very first chapter of the book.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. The blueprint for the modern multinational corporation, for global capitalism as we know it, it wasn't dreamed up in a Silicon Valley garage. It wasn't designed in a Wall Street boardroom. It was forged on the docks of 17th century Amsterdam.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating and maybe even a little unsettling question to chew on. The world's first global corporation, the most valuable company ever, was this strange, state-backed hybrid of a company and an army. So what does that tell us about the foundations, the very bedrock of the capitalist system we all operate in today? It's definitely something to think about.